Hello, we're Andy the Maniacal Cinephile. Thanksgiving and Black Friday is almost here. Therefore, it's the time of eating.
And needing a chainsaw to get through the stores.
To celebrate gluttony and genocide, I've decided to rank all 8 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies from worst to best. Now, this isn't a definitive list, just my personal opinion.
So let us know your ranking in the comments below.
Which movies will survive, and what will be left of them? For 25 years, The Next Generation has held the title as the worst Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. The 4th entry was written and directed by original co-writer Kim Henkel, which seems promising, but nope. The characters are over the top and cartoonish. Matthew McConaughey chews the scenery as the main villain, Vilmer. His performance is so exaggerated and batshit crazy, it makes Next Generation slightly watchable.
And that's before the director yelled action.
The film was screened as the return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1994 before being shelved by Columbia Pictures for 2 years. It was recut and released as Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation after Renee Zellweger and McConaughey became Hollywood stars, but was a critical and financial failure. Apparently, McConaughey's agent put pressure on Columbia Pictures not to release the film theatrically. Some fun trivia is that The Next Generation features uncredited cameos from Marilyn Burns, Paul A. Partain, and John Dugan, all stars of the original classic. The film itself is a train wreck. It lacks gore, they eat pizza instead of people, and if the movie wasn't incoherent enough, we find out the family is in cahoots with basically the Illuminati.
Whoa, Leatherface is in a club with Beyonce.
Speaking of Leatherface, his treatment in this film is pathetic.
You sit the f*** down and shut up.
Wow. The only weapon these characters needed was a Renee Zellweger.
Move over, Caitlyn Jenner. There's already a face for the transgendered. And it's made from somebody else's.
Not only is Leatherface not scary, but he only kills one person, and it's not even with a chainsaw. But worst of all is that Leatherface is very annoying.
He won't stop screaming.
I can't take it. Next movie.
I actually kinda struggled determining the worst in the series. Spots 7 and 8 kept flip-flopping because I greatly dislike the most recent entry. Leatherface is a prequel about 4 loonies who kidnap a young nurse while escaping from a Texas mental institution. Pursued by a deranged sheriff out to avenge his daughter's death, the disturbed teens go on a violent road trip from hell, molding one of them into the legendary killer known as Leatherface. At first I thought I would like it for being different. It's a road movie instead of teens running around a farmhouse.
But it's basically a ripoff of another movie. Only I can't remember which.
I thought it'd be cool to see the Sawyers again, but they're barely in it and poorly cast, minus Verna Sawyer. It's as if the screenwriter had an old script collecting dust about escaped mental patients, got this gig, and then changed the beginning and ending to make it a Leatherface origin story. The big issue is having to guess which kid is Leatherface. It should be pretty obvious.
I know I'd be able to pick him out of a lineup. Let's see here. There he is, number 2. I'd recognize that leathery face anywhere.
The movie sets up a red herring with Bud, the perfect candidate for a young Leatherface, only to end with a completely unnecessary and obvious twist that hangs the movie to die.
Get up there!
In this prequel, Jed is a polite, normal, good-looking young man who barely remembers the Sawyers after being taken away at a young age. The original Leatherface was born and raised to be a butcher, but Jed becoming Leatherface is left completely up to chance thanks to a stray bullet.
No bullet that day. No Leatherface. No scalding hot nacho cheese. No Maniacal Cinephile.
Difference can be good, but this doesn't feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and I'll never buy that 18-year-old as Leatherface. Hashtag not my Leatherface. The origins of the Sawyers, Jed's identity disorder, his disfigurement, and reason for using a chainsaw and skinning faces aren't properly fleshed out and forced into the last 10 minutes. Every facet of Jed is the complete opposite of the Leatherface created by director Tobe Hooper and actor Gunnar Hansen.
That twist is a real spit in the face mask.
The only reason this isn't ranked last is because it's actually a quality-made movie in terms of directing, cinematography, and acting. But at the same time, Next Generation is just so damn weird. It's oddly more interesting.
Like a gnarly wreck involving clown cars.
Texas Chainsaw 3D. They forgot Massacre, and it's in 3D. I'm only on the title and already it has 2 strikes. This entry ignores all the other sequels, even Tobe Hooper's Part 2, and serves as a direct sequel to the original. Okay, so far, we're off to a fresh, decent start. We're back in 1973, in the moments after Sally's escape. They rebuilt the original house in great detail. It was also brilliant casting to have Bill Moseley play the cook after Jim Sedow's passing. Die-hard fans will also enjoy cameos from Gunnar Hansen, Marilyn Burns, John Dugan, and Jigsaw.
'Cause Lionsgate.
Wait, Andy, who are those other family members?
Whoops, you're asking too many questions. Better kill them all off and torch the place.
Movie was a little short, but had a fitting conclusion.
We then jump forward, either 20 or 40 years.
There's more? Oh no. And also, oh no.
Another issue I have is the plot. I wish I was in the room when somebody pitched, okay, I have an idea. How about a girl inherits Leatherface?
What?
Perhaps most embarrassing is that the entire movie is one big plot hole. The movie is set in modern day. However, we see the main character Heather as a baby in 1973. Therefore, Heather should be 40 years old.
Which Alexandra Daddario clearly is not. Oh, yeah.
Andy, something's happening to our special purpose!
The filmmakers know this too, which is why they go out of their way to hide the date of the original whenever they can. Would it have been so bad to set the film in 1993 instead of 2013? Was it worth throwing out logic for Trey Songz and cell phones?
Give me a visual.
You got it.
Maybe Leatherface has stock in FaceTime.
In short, Texas Chainsaw 3D is dumb.
Welcome to Texas, motherfucker!
Very dumb.
Do your thing, cuz.
However, at least it's not afraid to try new things. It has a lot of plot for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and oddly, tried to turn Leatherface into an anti-hero?
Leatherface is pretty strong for a senior citizen.
New Line Cinema got their hands on Leatherface and tried to recapture the success they had with Freddy Krueger. However, the pressure of launching a franchise and studio meddling hurt this sequel. Director Jeff Burr was fired during production, only to be rehired when nobody else wanted the job. New Line originally wanted director Peter Jackson, but it didn't work out.
Ooh, New Line, call him back when you do Lord of the Rings.
So the studio and director were butting heads while also fighting the MPAA. Part 3 was actually the last movie to receive the dreaded X rating, before it was replaced by NC-17. It took 11 submissions and 5 minutes of cut footage to receive an R rating. Even with behind-the-scenes drama and censored special effects, Part 3 has its moments. R.A. Mihailhoff plays a more intimidating Leatherface after the sillier Part 2. Imagine Leatherface is a baby in Part 1, going through puberty in Part 2, and is now a rebellious teenager. Although the family tree is getting a little confusing, the all-new family members aren't all that bad. My personal favorite is the equally charming and crazy Tex, played by Viggo Mortenstein.
Ooh, also call him back when you do Lord of the Rings.
Final girl Michelle, played by Kate Hodge, is a little dull, but thankfully we have the badass Benny, played by Dawn of the Dead's Ken Foree. Test audiences liked Benny so much that they reshot the ending, without the director's knowledge.
New Line, you sneaky son of a bit. Huh? A cease and desist? I'll add it to the pile. Along with the restraining orders.
Yeah, we saw Benny's head get chainsawed in half, but it was merely a flesh wound.
Hey, it's me! It's me!
My favorite part is that Stretch finally made it as a news reporter.
Lastly, Part 3 has the best chainsaws in the series. The teaser trailer had the Excalibur chainsaw. In the film, it makes sense that Leatherface would decorate his chainsaw with skin and bones. But the real beauty is the golden chainsaw engraved with Drayton Sawyer's famous line.
The saw is family.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, is a prequel to the remake. A horror prequel is tough, because you know it's not going to end well for the protagonist. However, it's more about the journey than the ending. In 1939, baby Leatherface is born in a slaughterhouse, which is a little on the nose.
Poor little Tommy. He was a dumpster baby.
That's the ugliest thing I ever saw.
Jump forward 30 years and two brothers, Eric and Dean, are driving across the country with their girlfriends, Chrissy and Bailey, to enlist in the Vietnam War. The road trip coincides with Thomas Hewitt going postal after getting fired from the slaughterhouse.
Leatherface had a job? Even we can't hold down a 9 to 5.
Ah, yes, Mr. Face. Can I call you Leather? What are your job qualifications?
I was born where you're standing.
I like this Leatherface, the remake family, and the fresh meat. Dean wanting to dodge the draft added great conflict between his brother and Sheriff Hoyt. Speaking of Hoyt, spending more time with actor R. Lee Ermey is always a good thing.
Unless you're Vincent D'Onofrio.
You're right.
Overall, I like The Beginning, and think it's a solid Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Honestly, probably the last good one that was made. However, the main issue I have is the origin parts. It felt rushed and poorly thought out. Leatherface finding the chainsaw, his first face mask, the cannibalism, Charlie becoming Sheriff Hoyt, and Monty losing his legs all felt lackluster. Nobody becomes a serial killer overnight. It's a series of events throughout their life that make the monster. When it comes to a Leatherface origin story, You can't cram what should be years of backstory into one day.
I like your new face.
Tobe Hooper realized you can't recapture the gritty realism of the first film. So instead, Tobe went in a different direction and made a dark comedy full of over-the-top Tom Savini effects.
So it's kinda like Gremlins 2.
Some fans initially hated the sequel for taking this route, but over the years it has become a cult classic. Unfortunately, the sequel also suffered from studio meddling, this time from Cannon Films. Flaws aside, it's great to have back Leatherface, the cook, and the hitchhiker as a corpse. It also introduced the world to horror veteran Bill Moseley as the memorable Chop Top.
What the shit? Hey, lick my plate, you dog dick!
Oh, this actually kind of feels nice on our burns.
Caroline Williams, who plays radio DJ Stretch, is probably my favorite final girl in the series. Sally's hysteric screaming is the stuff of legend, but Stretch is a more developed and interesting character.
Let's be honest. It's the legs.
The Sawyer family is hiding out in an abandoned theme park while Sally and Franklin's uncle, played by the eccentric Dennis Hopper, seeks revenge.
Dennis Hopper once stated that this was the worst movie he'd ever been in.
This was before Super Mario Brothers.
I'm the Lord of the Harvest.
Who's that? Some new health food bunch?
In the end, director Tobe Hooper delivered a memorable horror comedy that should be embraced for being different, instead of a retread. The remake is a savage take on the original classic, with an updated coat of polish. It may not look like a documentary, but it's still beautifully macabre, thanks to the production design and cinematography from Daniel Pearl, who shot the original. Visually, the remake looks great.
I mean, would you just look at that framing? And the lighting. Wow.
The five Utes are better developed and have decent chemistry. Jessica Biel isn't the scream queen Marilyn Burns was, but does a decent job. The remake does what a good remake should do. It follows the same road, but takes detours here and there.
Unlike others that get completely lost.
They each feature a crazy hitchhiker that plays out two different ways. One is a family member, and the other an escaped victim. Having to deal with a stranger's suicide is a novel inciting incident.
Suicide is no joke. It doesn't hurt to ask your murder victim if they need to talk.
Andrew Brynarski, all controversies aside, is probably the most evil and intimidating Leatherface, which was welcomed after the wimpy Next Generation. R. Lee Ermey as the depraved Sheriff Hoyt is right up there as one of the series' best characters. I miss the cook and the hitchhiker, but the screenwriter was wise enough to know that you can't recast those characters, and you need fresh villains. Overall, there isn't a whole lot I would change. I miss the third act dinner scene, but it was already perfect, and instead, we get to see Leatherface in a slaughterhouse for the first time. I also wouldn't cut off Leatherface's arm.
A one-armed Leatherface can't do a sequel.
Or wipe his butt.
My biggest complaint, and it's an odd one, is that this remake was a success. It opened the floodgates to the remake craze, still felt today. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest independent horror movies ever. It's a personal favorite of mine, one I've seen dozens of times. Hell, I once watched it 3 times in one day.
Seriously, we have no life.
The film claims to be based on true events. Bullshit! But with horror movies, always take that with a grain of salt. The film was inspired by Wisconsin ghoul Ed Gein, who robbed graves and made masks and furniture out of human skin. The story goes that these college hippie filmmakers didn't care about lying to the audience because the president and government lied to them about Watergate and Vietnam. What it lacks in character development and plot, it makes up for in subtext. There are themes and messages that can be read between the lines. For instance, Grandpa lost his job at the slaughterhouse after being replaced by the cattle gun.
Franklin, I like me. Please change the subject.
Therefore, the Sawyers are victims of industrial capitalism, forced to become literal bloodsuckers. Whoops, I said the B word. No, Grandpa, I don't have any more blood for you. I know, but in 2019 it's getting harder to find hippie blood. And I know you like edibles. The dinner scene is basically a parody of a sitcom family. You have the breadwinner who comes home after a long day, the rebellious teenager, and the neglected housewife.
Get back in there! Get in there!
Get back in the kitchen and make some more finger sandwiches.
By treating and slaughtering its main characters like farm animals, the film is also pro-vegetarian. See, good Andy? The scary movie wants you to eat your veggies.
But I wanted ice cream for dinner.
It's been called the goriest movie ever. But they maybe use 1 gallon of fake blood. The original is mainly psychological and feels real. That feels like the lived-in house of a murderer. They feel like real psychos and not actors. That feels like a real annoying person. The film is psychological, even down to the score. Composer Wayne Bell and director Tobe Hooper used instruments, bones, and slaughterhouse tools. Now that's what I call industrial music. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most influential horror movies in history, often imitated, but never duplicated. For over 40 years, its legacy has lived on, thanks to multiple sequels, remakes, and prequels.
Huh? Damn it! Of course! While we shoot this, they announce another reboot! Andy is gonna be pissed when I tell him. I'll wait for when he's in a good mood.
Don't forget to share your ranking down below. This has been Andy, the Maniacal Cinephile.
Thanks for watching.
In other words, be sure to comment and smash that like button with a sledgehammer. I said, with a sledgehammer! Oh, come on, Grandpa. You got this. With a sledgehammer! Yeah! Get him!